outside the police station. Occasionally someone would walk along the corridor past his office, but Wallander hoped nobody would knock on his door. He wanted to be left in peace. In peace from what? He asked himself. Perhaps what I want most of all is not to have to think about myself, about the increasing feeling of repugnance I'm carrying around inside myself, and which I don't discuss with anybody else at all. Autumn leaves swirled against the window of his office. He wondered if he ought to take some of the holiday owed to him and try and find a cheap package trip to Mallorca or some similar place. But he stopped short of making any such decision. Even if the sun was shining down on a Spanish island, he would be unable to be at peace with himself. He looked at his desk calendar. It was 2002, October. He had been a police officer for over 30 years, and had progressed from a probationer patrolling the streets of Malmö to become an experienced and respected detective who had successfully solved numerous difficult cases of serious crime. Even if he could not be pleased with his life as a human being, he could be pleased with his performance as a police officer. He had done his job well, and perhaps helped people to feel more secure. A car in the street outside roared past at full speed, tires screaming. A young man at the wheel, Wallander thought. He is no doubt well aware that he is driving past the police station. His intention is to irritate us, of course. But he can't do that to me. Not anymore. Wallander went out into the corridor. It was empty. He could hear faint sounds of laughter from behind a closed door. He went to fetch a cup of tea, then returned to his office. The tea tasted odd. When he looked at the bag, he realized that he had taken one tasting of sweet jasmine. He didn't like it, threw the bag into the waste paper basket, and poured the drink into a plant pot containing an orchid given to him by his daughter Linda. It suddenly struck him how everything had changed during his many years as a police officer. When he had first started to patrol the streets, there was a big difference between what happened in a city like Malmö and in small towns like Ystad. But nowadays there was hardly any difference at all. This was especially true for all the crimes connected with drugs. During his early days in Ystad, a lot of drug addicts went to Copenhagen in order to obtain certain types of narcotic. Now you could buy everything in Ystad. He knew that there had also been an explosion in drug trafficking over the internet. Wallander often talked to his colleagues about how it had become so much more difficult to be a police officer in recent years. But now, as he sat in his office and watched the autumn leaves sticking onto the window panes, he suddenly wondered if that were really true. Was that just an excuse to avoid thinking about how society had changed, and hence also criminality? Nobody has ever accused me of being lazy, Wallander thought. But perhaps that's what I am, despite everything, or am becoming so. He stood up, put on the jacket that had been draped over his visitor chair, and left the office. His thoughts remained inside the room, the questions unanswered. He drove home through the dark streets. Rainwater was glistening on the asphalt. His head was suddenly empty. He had the next day off. Half asleep, he heard the distant ring of the telephone in the kitchen. His daughter Linda, who had started work as a police officer in Ystad the previous autumn, after finishing her training at the police college in Stockholm, was still living in his flat. She should really have moved out by now, but had not yet received a contract for the flat she had been promised. He heard her answer, and was relieved that he wouldn't need to bother about it. Martinson had recovered and been on duty since the previous day, and he had promised not to disturb Wallander. Nobody else ever phoned him, especially not early on a Sunday morning. On the other hand, Linda spent ages every day on her mobile. He had sometimes wondered about that. His own relationship with telephones was quite complicated. He felt put out whenever a phone rang. He guessed it was a sign of the simple truth that they belonged to different generations. The bedroom door opened. He gave a start and became angry. "Shouldn't you knock?" "It's only me. What would you say if I flung open the door of your room without knocking?" "I keep my door locked. You want it on the phone." "Nobody ever rings me." "But someone has." "Who?" "Martinson.